All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the lightning talks here. These will be some great speakers who have some 7-minute talks that will be under the general topic of extending the Open edX platform. So I'll introduce each speaker, and then they'll give their presentation. And if there's time, we can have questions, but otherwise, please hold them till the end, and then we'll have some time, hopefully at the end, to either have the speakers answer questions, or you can come up if we're already at time. I think there should be a break coming up soon after that. So, all right, without further ado, pleased to welcome William Akehurst from the African Leadership University and his talk.
Thanks. So, yeah, I'm William, and I'm the Learning Solutions Lead at the African Leadership University. And today I'm going to talk to you about how we have extended Open edX to accommodate our personal learning needs. So before I can get started, I think that I need to give a little bit of a background story. And the mission at the African Leadership University is to educate 3 million entrepreneurial ethical leaders. And you know, the reason for this is because in approximately 6,000 days, Africa is going to have the world's largest workforce. And we believe that leaders are needed in order to mitigate any potential problems from that. So this year we've been voted Fast Company's most innovative company in Africa, and they ranked us number 39 on the global list. And we just can't achieve our goal of 3 million leaders with the traditional educational model. And so we have to do things a little bit differently in order to achieve our goals. And right now, we believe that most people don't pursue a career in the area that they study. And so we believe that it's missions, not majors, that is going to be the key to our problem, and that's the backing of our flagship programs. So right now we're offering a Bachelor of Entrepreneurial Leadership and a Bachelor of Arts in Global Challenges. And these programs are going to be student-driven programs where they declare their mission with us, and then they pursue their personal learning outside the classroom, outside of our institution, in order to meet their personal mission. Obviously, edX is not a platform right now that can accommodate this, so that's where our extension comes in. So our plan here was to create dashboards that are accessible in parallel to edX, and then we are going to we need a way to record the student learning that takes place outside of the classrooms. We also have to implement a approval and monitoring process. And in line with the edX roadmap, we've chosen to develop these new features using React and the Material UI library. Right, so the first thing is an intro here to the student dashboards. So basically, our student dashboard is going to be built very similar to an Android application using Material UI. And our first step in this process is to be able to record a student's mission. And so students choose one of 14 grand opportunities or challenges, and that's pretty much in line with the UN's challenges that they've declared. And so a student will just select their area and enter their description, and then this is used through the approval process from the faculty side, and that they can see where these students are looking to go and then approve whether or not their learning activities fall in line with their mission. And the students' personal learning activities, we refer to them as nodes. And these learning nodes have 3 different aspects that we had to build out for. And so one was the creation of these nodes. One is the submission and the completion. So from a student's perspective, there's 4 statuses. There's pending, pending approval. There's an approved node, and then there's a submitted node and completed. In parallel with this as well, we have the faculty side has the same sort of feature set as well, where they will approve, there's this response and approval process that happens. So right now we're looking at the first step in a node creation, and it's basically this, at this step, it is the details. And after the details, we are attaching keywords to this, and this process is reviewed throughout the submission as well. And so these keywords are areas that students feel they're going to grow, or what they feel they're going to learn at the time of study through the node activity. And then we'll be using these in the future to help with an automated approval process. And this slide here is just a visual of what a pending node approval looks like for the students. And at this stage, students only have two actions. They can either edit or they can delete. So, you know, we tried to realize that there will be typos, and students may decide that this actually doesn't meet their goals, and they can choose to delete that before it gets to the approval process. Once a node has been approved from the student side, then they're able to, at this stage, they just submit. That's all we're looking for, and right now it'll be a URL-based submission, and at this stage, we hope in the future to be able to accommodate file uploads. And this is a screen cap of what the submitted nodes are going to look like. And at this stage, for students, it links them directly to their assignments. And if they wish to expand the cards, then they can view the details that are associated with it. And our final view is the completed status. And at this stage, it really is just confirmation for students that they have, their submission was marked as complete. Thanks.
Great, thank you, William. Next up, we'll have Meghan Morrissey from Harvard University. We'll be talking about building an engagement circuit using online learning.
Is there a clicker to is there a clicker, or is it a... Just do it here? Okay, that's great. Okay, hi everybody. My name's Meghan Morrissey, and I work at Harvard. I've been working at Harvard-X for the past 6 years doing instructional development, so creating courses with faculty, mainly working on courses related to China, but in the past year, focusing on a course called Improving Your Business Through a Culture of Health that really focused on small to medium-sized business leaders who would want to learn this concept of culture of health. So that's the agenda for today, talking about the Culture of Health course, the MOOC, and then also how we piloted a new online learning strategy called the Engagement Circuit, and then also how we used intentional strategies to create two-way conversations amongst stakeholders and really as much pushing out and bringing back in insights so that we could grow a social movement called Culture of Health. So that's the agenda. Won't have time for the trailer. This is the core course team with the faculty leader, John McDonough from the Public Health School, Jolene Lair and Christine DeZara, and then a whole host of faculty across the schools, experts in leading culture of health initiatives, and then learners themselves. It was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, 2016. So this is a part of a larger scale initiative across the university. And this is the MOOC side of it that I'll be talking about. And we fall into the disseminating lessons and training future leaders. So the idea is Harvard and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation have the mutual goal of trying to transform United States to become a more healthy, happier, equitable nation, and doing that through health, concentrating, prioritizing health and well-being. So just again, this is the portfolio of programs, and the MOOC was what HarvardX got involved with as a collaboration with the executive education team from the Chan School. The content was based around 4 pillars of health. Research from John Quelch, who was at the business school as of last year, and now he's at the University of Miami. So talking about consumer health, community health, environmental health, employee health. Those are the foundational pillars that the course addressed. And again, the audience was business leaders that this could be used in their own context, in their own organizations. So these are the mutual goals. Increasing exposure to this new social movement, culture of health, flexibility for leaders, so making sure that it could become self-paced, that it could really be used in their own context in a way that made sense for them. So there's a lot of research done beforehand by other teams across the university. Flexibility for the content, for the course teams, the faculty, to be able to use it and gain insight from the actual offering. Exploring the audience, so understanding who came, who already was familiar with this concept of culture of health, and then also gaining insight as the course was running and post to understand who we might reach out to later in-person executive education context or for other online purposes. And then again, this two-way conversation across various stakeholders, which we'll define in a minute, that is really trying to push out as much as take in insight from the audience, all in the service of trying to learn as much as teach in this course. So this was our aspiration, these were our goals, and this is the kind of the engagement circuit that was trying to serve the mission of building a culture of health. So throughout the design process, the building, the executing, we were always going back to this idea of who's our audience, the faculty team, the learners, the communities, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and making sure that we are keeping that in mind and making sure that, so the circuit idea is that all these ideas and strategies and decision points are all going in and out and within these various stakeholders, and making sure that we're being intentional about our strategies and putting in feedback loops into our assessments, into our survey designs, making sure that we're creating that very intentional conversation and not just being passive designers, teachers in the process. So Harvard team was made up of 20 faculty across the university, and I think the last speaker, it was the last session, understanding what are the goals of the faculty so that we can provide value to them in the collection of data from what the students are speaking about in the course and how they're answering assessment questions. Then we also had the communities, so who are the people that are already doing culture of health initiatives. So we brought in into the curriculum framework real case examples, so CVS Health taking away tobacco products off the shelves. That was, we had a chief medical officer come in and do an interview, speak to the faculty, so that was embedded into the curriculum. We had the headquarters of GE move into Boston, so thinking about how they were approaching the community in a really healthy way. So that was an interesting example of a business decision that perhaps you wouldn't think of GE or Uber or CVS Health as being in the health business, although CVS Health is clearly that. And then learners, of course, thinking about this in in 3 focus areas: learner to self, so making sure that the content that we're producing is relevant to them; learner to learner, making sure that we're creating assessments where people are speaking to each other and getting back information from us, and that we're communicating back to the faculty team so that they can be part of the conversation, especially in the delivery of the course. So that's the engagement circuit, and these are various examples where we were successful in creating that kind of two-way conversation across the multiple stakeholders, and we just finished a course report. If anybody's interested, happy to share that. Would definitely go into more details than I have right now, but this is social media presence, making sure that we're very intentional and it's not just a afterthought, that we're making sure that we're aiming for the right audiences to get the word out and spread the word about this social mission. And then one last example with demographics, we used demographic questions as assessment questions in the curriculum that some of them were adaptively implemented so that if understanding our audience was essential so that we could reach out to them later and grow this course even more, we wanted to make sure that the response rate was high. So that was something that we focused on and got a lot more information than we ordinarily would. And if anybody has any questions, happy to answer those and reach out, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meghan. Next up, we've got Helinna Ayalew from Liquid Telecom, who'll be speaking on Open edX for Africa.
That's all right. Hello. Hey, how are you guys doing? So I'm super excited to be here, very happy to have the opportunity to share a bit of what we're doing. My name is Helinna Ayalew. I work for a company called Liquid Telecom. We are the largest fiber and cloud infrastructure provider in Africa. So those pink lines that you see is where we've laid fiber on the continent. So all through southern, east into North Africa, and next we're going to be moving west. We span 13 countries, almost 3,000 colleagues at this point, and our traditional business has been in wholesale and enterprise customers. We're an African business born on the continent, really with the aim of providing connectivity to the different corners of the continent. So we're very passionate about Africa. I'm happy that William went before me and talked about Ayalew, because one of the big things, news items that comes up is the demographic challenge, right? So as William mentioned, there'll be 1 billion Africans of working age by 2035. So when you hear this number, it's kind of a terrifying statistic, but we actually see it as a huge opportunity. Obviously, with the youth, there's a huge interest and influx of entrepreneurship. People, I think entrepreneurship is kind of, we've kind of labeled this as an innovation or an exciting place that we're in right now, but it's been happening on the continent for many years out of necessity. Huge focus on the SDGs, of course, Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, increasing trade within the continent, and then, of course, tech, internet and mobile. Africa is a mobile-first continent, and then for us, being a technology company, we're quite excited about the possibilities that exist there. These are just some of the sectors that are either very popular for innovation or very rife with possibilities for innovation at the moment. Here, so fintech you hear a lot about, GovTech, government is slower on the uptake, but it's very needed. And then this is, in line with all of the exciting activities happening around entrepreneurship. This is a scoping study done by some of our colleagues at Microsoft. The skill level from a quantity perspective is just not there yet. So this is from 2017. We're guessing about 300,000 developers on the continent. The demand is much, much bigger than that. So we at Liquid Telecom, we're sitting around thinking, okay, we've invested millions into this infrastructure. We have the capacity to do so much more, but the skills are simply not there yet. So for that reason, we started this initiative, 21C Skills Africa, 21st Century Skills, which is the initiative that I run. This is essentially a learning platform this is our first big endeavor on Open edX, which is why I'm here. We, on this platform, focus on advanced computer and technical skills, so areas like data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, which are globally in demand, but in Africa in particular, not very widely available at all. So when we decided to embark on this mission, went on the Open edX site and looked for a system integrator in East Africa, found the only one. It's a company called Suvasi. Amos was going to be here with me but couldn't make it. So we work very closely with them, quite hand in hand, to develop the platform, the content, the functionality. This will nothing new to you here. But one thing I will say is on the mobile side, that is really kind of the sweet spot for us. So far, we've run all of our pilots on the web versions. We have our first pilot was a group of 500 data scientists based in South Africa. The hosting organization was based in South Africa, but for students all over the continent. We've done it through web, but mobile, especially as we go into more rural areas, will be key. And then, of course, a dashboard, because we have there is a great dearth of statistics and information about learning on the continent that we can share and sort of analyze and use to assess our programs. So that's a big part of what we do. Our goals over the next 24 months is to train 10,000 certified professionals in areas like data science, cloud architecture. Game development is a big one for us as well. We are a business that sells cloud, and games consume a lot of cloud. But we also see it as imperative that as the gaming industry grows across the world, that Africans have a chance to participate as producers rather than simply consumers in this industry. Where it gets pretty exciting, I think, rather than just putting up a site and saying, come and take courses, we've actually taken a proactive step of implementing a strategy of community learning. So what this means is we already provide connectivity to a lot of innovation hubs, universities, secondary schools, just internet across the continent. So we thought, instead of just giving internet, why can't we bring people together in those centers and actually offer courses through that? So now, the model would be we work with an innovation hub. They can offer on a Saturday morning, Wednesday night, whatever suits them, a meetup around a cohort of students that are taking a data science course, for instance. So you have a group that's holding them accountable. You have space that's providing connectivity, because that's a huge challenge, recurring challenge, where students can come and actually do their courses. And then through this method, have them actually finish the courses that they start and are able to earn industry certifications. We do this through partnerships. We are a technology company. We're the facilitator and the backbone, but everything we do is in partnership with others, Microsoft, of course, being our biggest one. We're the largest reseller for cloud and Office Microsoft products on the continent. So we've started this journey with them as the main learning partner, but we're very open to extending beyond that. We also, as I mentioned, our traditional customers are enterprise clients. They're other businesses. So we really want to instill the culture of learning and to help them with their own LMSs. So one of the products that we're offering is actually helping create Open edX instances for them with their own internal learning goals. And to get their own certifications and offer their own content, and then to help small-scale trainers that are doing maybe specific projects in their geographic areas expand beyond that capacity. And then, of course, we achieve this through a combination of a traditional commercial model and a philanthropic model. So we're always fundraising to see who might be interested in supporting additional students to learn on the platform. So with that in mind, if you want to talk about how we can train 1 billion Africans, please come and find me. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks Helinna for a great talk. Next up, we've got Colin Fredericks from Harvard University, who is speaking on designing the advanced edX training course.
How's my voice on the microphone? Are we good? All right. My name is Colin. I am indeed from HarvardX. I have the shirt today. I am making a course for people who make courses, and if you have made a course on edX, I want to hear from you about what you want to see in my course for course-making people. The basic idea for this is that it would be the next thing that you do after you take Studio X or after you have made a course on your own. You've got a little bit of experience. You've maybe seen a couple of pieces of XML and used more than just the advanced editor, but you're not sure exactly what to do next. This course is about the what to do next. So we're going to talk about advanced design, we're going to talk about better operations, we're going to talk about how to make things look nice and not just in a let's throw lots of CSS at it sort of way, but in a let's throw good CSS at it and let's make HTML that's easy to edit later on, and really dig into a lot of the features that are there in the platform, but are really just overshadowed by the planes moving overhead and causing serious problems for anyone to hear me. No, but that are in the platform that don't get used that often. We want to make people be able to use what's in the course really easily. We don't want people to look at the course and be like, oh my God, how did they do that? We want them to download the file that shows them exactly how we did that so they can use it in their own course. So when you've got a happy little image slider with pictures of my cats, then we give you the exact HTML for that, right? We also want this to be a real course. We do not want to just put up a grab bag full of stuff. I have several of those. They just sort of sit there and get disorganized eventually. This is going to have assignments in it so that when people are finished getting the content that they want and putting it into their course, we give them a little bit extra so they're like, oh, I shouldn't use it that way, I should use it this way, or I should watch out for this, or why is this broken? Let me see if I can figure out why. Just that little bit of extra to help people understand what they're using better. It is going to be made by people who have made classes. We're not going to throw a bunch of stuff in here that has never seen contact with the wild. We want to make sure that you have a strategy, that you know the caveats for things, and that you have checklists to go through. The idea here is to really upskill people from I am a beginning course developer to I am a at least intermediate course developer. I've got to have a session on this next. After the lightning talks, I'm running the Birds of a Feather on this. Anyone is welcome to come by. I would love to hear ideas from those of you who have made courses. I'm easy to spot. I have green hair. If you want to just like come by and grab me at some point later if you're busy during Birds of a Feather. Also helping me out on this are Amy Woodgate of Woodgate Consulting and Shelley Upton of MIT. Shelley is actually right there in the back. So I'm definitely looking for more people to toss in some other ideas as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. And as Colin mentioned, next up at 3 o'clock, there will be the coffee break and Birds of a Feather, so plenty of chances to talk to any of our speakers or also check out the sessions. I think there was a sign-up list for Birds of a Feather by the registration desk. Next up, we've got Julie Mullen from MIT, who will be talking about best practices for real-world science and engineering lab exercises.
So while we're sorting out the technology, I'm Julie Mullen. I'm from actually MIT Lincoln Laboratory. So we have different concerns than campus, and most of our work is done preparing our own people with professional education courses, but some of them we're now rolling out. So when we get back, they asked for a PDF, so that's what I gave you. Okay, all right, as long as I did. So there are 4 things that I'd like to get across this afternoon. One of them is that there are a lot of things that are very easy to do in a digital sense, but that there are certain domains and disciplines where you need to be able to develop intuition about physical devices, about tools, and about physical phenomena, and they require that you have hands-on touching things. And then engineering is one of them, nursing is another. So I'm going to go, oh, that is there. Okay, the second thing is that there are a lot of challenges, but it's feasible. The third thing is you have to really be careful with your design. So this is more really about design and how to think about it. And the fourth item is I bring this here as sort of thinking about a work in progress. It's not really a work in progress. We're now doing our second one, but I would love to hear other people's experiences and learn from your thoughts about this project. So, so the first thing is that let's look at what the challenges are. We know how to deal with theory. We've been doing that for a while. We know how to deal with practice. edX has a really nice set of examples and exercises. But the real question is, what happens if you're actually building something? How do you actually help people build that? If you look at a YouTube video, oftentimes YouTube videos will give you a description of how to build something, and then when it doesn't work, you're like, okay, well, maybe I can sort that out, maybe I can't. You can't do that in a course. So the next part is data collection. We're not having people collect data in a lab like you would do in a university. We're sending them out into the wild, and that kind of data can be raw, and it can be difficult, and it can be broken. So they need some way of developing an intuition on how to handle it. The same is true for lab exercises. So the case study that we have on the Builder Radar is that we started with an initial course that was done in person, entirely in person, with lectures and the construction. And then the challenges there were, as we started thinking about moving it, we moved it to a blended course first, and then it's now self-paced. So within the construction part, it's like, again, how do you build troubleshooting skills? That's that YouTube video problem. What happens if you have a broken part? How does the learner know that the part is broken and not something they did? And so we needed to simplify the design. That was one of our challenges. So the data collection has many of the problems I mentioned before, that you need to be able to have some intuition about what you expect. Did you set the experiment up properly? And are my results good? Are they poor? Should I take that again? So the way that we did this was we did, of course, the standard approach for part of the design, but we took our build and we've built out, you can see there, the units that we've built out for the build, the tune, and the troubleshoot, and then we build out some pre-collection preparation for the data collection, just to give people a sense. Think about what it is that you're collecting. So taking a slightly deeper dive, when we think about the construction, you need clear instructions, really step by step, with a lot of pictures and images. A video is great. It's nice to have a video and see how it goes together, but in reality, people build a step at a time, and they can't keep stopping the video. So having very clear images, and then you'll see way at the top there, I don't have a pointer, way at the top we have tips. Things that you should do, things to be careful of. The second one is tuning. There's a step there where we give some clear instructions. This is what you should expect. Is this what you get? Throughout the sections, I guess you guys call them subsections, throughout the subsections of the course, at the very last unit is always, did you get this? Yes? Great. No? Here's a hint. So those are those exercises with hints to send them back to where they might be able to fix the problem. Likewise, we had functional testing. Here are some good examples. Here are some bad examples. You know, this is not what you want, with explanations on how you got that so that you can correct it. And finally, the data collection, just giving them some sense of how to interpret that data and whether or not they have the right data. So I know there are a lot of words, and I probably should have said, I meant to say at the very beginning, I speak very quickly, and for those of you for whom English is not your native language, I'm hoping that having the slides with the words makes it a little easier. So what we found is, start with a course that you know and you know well, and that you've run in person, and understand where students go astray, because then you can build in the pieces that you need in order to make it go well. Design the construction so that it's a set of simple steps. One of the key pieces there is to have troubleshooting tips, and for both good and bad. This is a good thing to do. Try to avoid this. Package it up as a kit so that people can buy it and don't have to go around finding the individual parts. This is a very expensive kit right now. It's about $500, mostly because the RF parts are expensive, but we're trying to bring that price point down so that it's useful for high schools. So it's down in the $100, $200 range. Likewise, we're building an introduction to laser comm, and we're doing the same thing. So we're starting to try to bring things down. Provide controlled experiments. So one of the things that you can do with this radar is if you have a piece of cardboard and you put tin foil over it, assuming that you're someplace where you can get cardboard and tinfoil, there are a couple of things that you can do so that you can have a controlled experiment that's not very expensive. That allows you to then make sure everything's working. And your experiments, really when you go through, you need to have questions to encourage people to think about the experiment beforehand. Because we've seen people do things where they hadn't thought about what the radar was capable of, or what the device, if we make it more general, what a sensor or a device is capable of, so they try something that's not gonna work. So you want to avoid that so they don't get confused, and basically try to think about the misconceptions they're going to have so you can offset them. And then we really, truly recommend testing the new design as a blended course as often as you can so that you can just find out what's there. And we've rolled ours out as a self-paced course. I'd be happy to talk about it later. I'd be happy to show it to you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thank you, Julie. Finally, rounding out our series of lightning talks this afternoon, we'll have Ildi Morris speaking on assessing critical thinking skills online.
Great. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. So I work as an independent learning design consultant, and one of the more recent customers that I had a problem to solve, which was essentially twofold. One is, how do you teach critical thinking online, a soft skill, but more importantly, how do you assess that? So I really broke this down into 4 areas: the problem, the solution, the approach, and what our next steps are going to be. It's not my alarm, I hope. That's okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the problem. So really just came down to employee performance. So the employees in question that were not performing well with their critical thinking are actually work as contractors for the US government. In particular, many of them were contractors for defense agencies within the US government. And unfortunately, these people didn't perform very well on this critical thinking test. The assessment tool that this industry relies upon is called the Watson-Glaser test. I'm curious how many people have heard of it. Yeah, I was one of those people that did not raise my hand either. Didn't know much about it. But it's an assessment tool that's been around for a while. And essentially, they scored 22.9%, which is really bad. And in terms of this organization that wanted to hire out their people for contractors, it put them in a really bad place of being in the 12 to 17% range of their competitors. So basically, employee performance was the issue, specifically around critical thinking skills. So the first thing we did was, analyze the audience just a little bit more. As I mentioned, we decided to start with a very focused audience, which were contract employees, specifically for the Defense Intelligence Agency. So as you can imagine, not being very good at critical thinking is kind of an issue if you're working for the DIA. And so the primary audience was the contractors, but really the long-term goal was to offer this training course for any government employee of the US government that would want to take the course. It was a pretty broad audience. They were distributed through the US and through Europe. Varied roles, everything from administrators to people who are more like analyzing actual defense and military data and needing to make decisions off of that. In terms of motivation, what we identified was, mainly there was going to be extrinsic motivation for these people. The DIA was so concerned they're actually willing to pay these people to complete the course. But we're also hoping to motivate them intrinsically by convincing them that they would be better at their jobs by thinking critically. So the open edX site that was set up is called FedLearn. Appsembler actually stood it up for my client. And, as I mentioned, it really was designed originally for contractors, but the goal, really thinking ambitiously, was any government agency that wanted to offer their training, and it's very distributed there as well, could offer it on this one-stop shop in this FedLearn site. I should also add that the My client was very ambitious, but very much sort of a startup. So startup resources is usually code for there was no money, no support. I worked on this project only half-time. He was a subject matter expert, so we really didn't have a lot to work with. So I'll talk a little bit more now about the approach. So my personal curriculum development approach, I'm sure many people have heard of this. It's sort of an oldie but a goodie. Works for me still. Wiggins-McTigue, understanding by design, essentially the whole idea of begin with the end in sight. So the first thing we did was identify the desired results, which was actually twofold. We didn't just want to improve their scores on the Watson-Glaser test, because that would mean creating a course that would teach them how to take a test, right? We actually also wanted them to demonstrate an improved ability to think critically in military situations with actual real data. So the evidence that we decided to work on would be to have learners respond appropriately to real-world scenarios that we would present in the course, and hopefully, as a result, achieve a higher score. And then the third step was to define the content strategy that would support the assessment evidence and the results. And that was really to use more of like a case study method in terms of teaching just the hard sort of skills around critical thinking, but also having them apply it to real-world scenarios. And then finally, we really were hoping to have some peer learning, although with this audience, that's always a challenge because it tends to be sort of secretive. Okay, so let me focus on the assessment strategy, and if you guys have questions about the other areas, I'm happy to talk more about that later. So for the course assessment itself, we really didn't want to waste anyone's time, so we created a pre-test so you could actually place out of the critical thinking course. So that way we got rid of people who were already high achievers. Then step two, we took a very traditional approach, mastery learning, with having graded and ungraded assessments throughout the course. But we did build in the complexity, and the content was based upon these real-world scenarios. The third step was at the end of the course, they would take a final exam that was very similar to this Watson-Glaser test, and we also included some test-taking content, because as we all know, as educators, half the battle in achieving good test scores is knowing how to take the test, as much as it is the content in it. So we did provide some scaffolding around that to help ensure their success. In terms of the assessment types that we use in the course, we did do some of the more common problem types, but I really tried to, have more active learning, more engagement with the assessment, again, to kind of motivate people to progress. So even simple questions we would turn into a drag and drop. It's just a little more fun to drag things and click buttons, I think. And then we also would have a peer instruction question, and it would be formulated around presenting them with actual military data and information and inviting people to talk about how they would respond in that situation. The strategy for the Watson-Glaser test was a little simpler. If you didn't pass the pre-test, then you had to take the Watson-Glaser test. We get a benchmark score, and then at the end of completing the critical thinking course, our hope was that their score would improve after taking it again. As I mentioned, just wanted to touch on very quickly, the content strategy was based on real-world scenarios. In particular, we chose the Kamasia case study. I don't know how many people remember in the Gulf War when there was a bunker that was blown up accidentally that actually had chemical weapons in it, and that initiated some of the Gulf War illnesses that happened afterwards. And that was clearly a very good example of many intelligence analysts not thinking very critically about some of the data presented to them. The way we would present the content was, again, no resources, right? So I found this awesome website called Pixton. How many people have heard of it or used it? Anyway, if you ever need to make a comic, it is the easiest, fastest thing. It's a great program. And so again, we would present the content, which honestly is kind of dry, not always the most exciting case studies out there, and put it in more of a comic book format and break it down so it would be more palatable for the learner. So the reason I'm speaking sort of in the future is because unfortunately we had a little hiccup in the US government, which sort of slowed everything down. And as a result, the course is actually scheduled to start in April. I was hoping when I wrote this RFP that I'd have like real data to share with you, but maybe next year. Again, the whole idea is that we don't want to have to use this Watson-Glaser test forever. It's really just like a benchmark, and after we see that the course is successful, the idea is to take it away. And I just want to close, like for anyone out there who needs to build courses on soft skills and you really want to evaluate its effectiveness, you know, I think this quote is from the teaching professor is very spot on. Like you really need to find the assessment tool that is used in that industry. So for example, this Watson-Glaser exam, you know, is used in that industry. It's probably not very active in other ones. You know, like people's definition of critical thinking is different depending upon the industry. So that is my takeaway, and thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Ildi. Let's give all our lightning talk speakers a quick hand. And we do have some time for questions, so if you have a question for one or more of the speakers, I'll bring the mic to you, and then we've got about 10 minutes.
Helinna, Jumbo, are you aware of some of the other MOOC courses that are available in Africa, in Congo and Angola? Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago, I helped 2 NGOs develop content in those 2 countries, both in French and Portuguese.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's always very helpful to have those resources available. And then I was also going to, after you answer that, and I was going to ask Julia about maker spaces. Have you considered adopting maker spaces into your learning things so that people around the world, there's about 20,000 maker spaces, both at public libraries all the way up to Fab Labs. And I have a big database that I'm willing to share.
The issue that we have is that the laboratory, unlike a regular university, our primary role is not as instructors. It is part of our mission, but it is not the primary mission. And so people, one of the reasons that we went to MOOCs is because we've been asked to teach this course in a number of places, and we simply can't do that and get our other work done. So we can't go out to the maker spaces, but certainly if you bought the kit, you could go there.
Exactly, I have a
somebody else could pick
database
it
that you
up.
connect the students to those spaces where people are tinkering already, and they can be amongst people, and they set their laptop.
And they could
Exactly.
reach out.
Yeah.
And that's something that we haven't added, in part because we are not. The nature of the laboratory is that we are not allowed to make that sort of recommendation.
Yeah, so we
Can't add it to the course.
yeah, Slab 6, we're having the maker movement during breakout if you want to connect with. It's not just.
I mean, I understand the maker movement. That's not the issue. The issue is that we can't bless anything. That's just the nature of the laboratory.
You can't just point to resources at all. Yeah.
No, not like that. Not like that. We can point to other resources and say, here's a website or something, but we can't actually say, go to a makerspace and do something. That's not something that we can do from our site.
Right. So it limits you quite a bit. You never say go join public access or none of that stuff in the other.
Not in our
Or an
courses,
artist
no.
resident.
No, but people can go find them. I mean,
Right.
makerspaces are out there. You can go find them.
Yeah, so I have a big database of all of that completely free, and it's been checked, added data mining on Slab 6.
All right, are there any other questions for any of our speakers? I see a couple.
Actually, I have lots of questions for William and Helinna. How do you put, what SMEs do you pair with to write your courses? Do you guys write them in-house? Do you pair with other companies? Actually, I feel like I need to talk to you guys like a whole bunch really quick because I also develop courses for African scholars who are studying all over the world with soft skills. So, and we're always looking to find SMEs on continent to help build. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys build?
Yeah, we typically build most of our courses in-house, so that's how we do ours. Yeah.
I feel like I should move. They keep making you
come all the way here. We, so far, have not built any content, actually. We do it through partnerships. So as I said, we use all the Microsoft content, but we'll be bringing on a lot of our other technology partners' content as well. So an example of this is we're rolling out a low-power, low connectivity IoT network in Kenya. So we're bringing all of their content onto the platform, making it available to university students, et cetera. So we probably won't do it immediately to be developing our own content, but maybe a few years down the line, depending on the situation. Yeah, for sure.
Do you change any of the content for your audience?
Do we, sorry?
Do you change any or adapt it to your audience?
No, but that's also primarily because our target audience is university students, sort of in their final years, or working professionals, or those that are in startups that are looking to build a certain skill set. So thus far, we've not adopted, but I think as we go into different demographics, students with different resource, access to different resources, we probably will look into that.
All right, I think there was a question on this side. There's still, oh.
Meghan mentioned working with a faculty team of 20, and I was wondering to what extent working with 20 is cumbersome, and to what extent working with 20 gives you a lot of added value.
So repeat the very end of the question.
To what extent it gives you added value?
Me or working with 20 faculty?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so I tend to work on these large-scale courses and that involve a lot of collaboration amongst faculty. And I think for this particular concept, culture of health, it's new. So it didn't. This group at the Chan School didn't come to HarvardX with a framework that we could follow or a course. And often our courses, we do try to change, but they come in with decades of teaching experience. So that was one thing, that this was a emerging social movement that faculty were getting together and really using this time to come together for the first time and create pairs between sectors of public health and business school research to come together and do something that they ordinarily don't get to do. So I think we saw across all the grant initiatives that the MOOC was really a mechanism to collaborate, and that's a really challenging thing to do, but I think it took a leader like John McDonough, who was, came from politics, to be able to, go and really be a connector across faculty. And then we also had someone that was very good at coordinating across grant initiatives, so that she would share back with us, what findings she was hearing and understanding from, various meetings at the business school and the Chan School. If we didn't have those connector pieces coming back and sharing, then I don't think it would have been as impactful in the curriculum planning, but I think it's worth doing, but you really need. I can share with you our report. We were extremely diligent about making sure that if you had 2 faculty in one section across 9 sections, that you had a clear approach, strategy, model, so that if you were the learner coming in, just like going to the New York Times or going to The Economist, it would make sense to you that. So in our faculty kickoff meeting, the main theme of what we wanted to get across by the end was building coherent, consistent learning experiences, not just this hodgepodge of different research ideas. It really needed to resonate and make sense to the learner at the end.